Man, it's a lot going on in America. It's a lot going on. To quote Marvin Gaye, make you want to holler and throw up both your hands. The Supreme Court doing whatever the hell it wants to do. Folks going crazy in state legislatures in general. Censorship is occurring all across the country of sources talk about black people and things of the like. There's so much happening, and how do you continue to make content in the midst of all the chaos? When I first started lawyering in 2024, so much of what I felt responsible to say and speak about everything. And I really had to learn that sometimes you have to choose your piece, but also choose to, one, respect the process and the way that things kind of go in the civil rights world. So much of my work and my professional life is related to the things that I care about. I work at a place where I expressly focus on civil rights issues. So much of my work is wrapped into like things I used to talk about a lot on social media. And I had to kind of realize that I have to allow those things to play out. And sometimes speaking about those things in my personal capacity, it drains me in a way that makes life seem like it's all doom and gloom in general, and it makes it hard to even want to make content at all. And so I had to start asking myself, how do I continue to make content? How do I continue to engage with people in a way that feels respectful and not a betrayal of the community that I've created, while still honoring myself and the advocacy and the work and the communities and things that I care about? And so that looked like taking a step away from some of the things I talked about previously a lot on my personal platforms, but continuing to do that work in my professional life, but also to highlight Black folks and Black issues and Black things that I care about in other ways that do not necessarily correlate to like the things I work in. But I never want my content to feel like it is absent or that I don't care about those things. I never want people who support me and follow me to feel like or make the assumption that because I'm not speaking about those things as frequently or even at all in some instances that I don't care about them, because that is not the case. Just wanted to make that clear at the outset. And also want to talk a bit about like the way that I deal with kind of all of this personally. If someone else wants to pick up this coping mechanism in the midst of all this crazy stuff, to help them kind of navigate these mercurial waters that we are in as a country. And for me, the answer has truly been reading. And it really started with these two books. Editing majoring here. I'm not sure why I said I started reading with these two books. I've reading long before that, but what did start here with these two books was the exploration of this genre and how I found it to be kind of freeing and reaffirming in this time period. So this is what I meant by it started here with these two books. The exploration of the neo-slave narrative genre as a literary genre started with Homegoing and Beloved. With Homegoing by Jan Gyasi and Beloved by Toni Morrison. Beloved was actually my book club read for the month of April. I read Beloved and then we talked about it on Easter Sunday. Beloved really did shift something in me. It really was like, it has been an earth-shattering and really a moving book in a way I really can't explain. I think the ways that I've always been taught about slavery have focused on the institution of slavery itself. And I've never really had an opportunity to learn about slavery from the perspective of those that it actually affected and impacted, and the way it shaped the psyche of generations of Black Americans and the impossible decisions that they were faced with, like Setha was faced with in Beloved. I don't know, man. It just, this book is a work of art. The way that Toni Morrison weaves together these stories, the way that she was able to create a world around the humanity and the lack of it that was regarded to Setha, to Paul D, to Denver, and to the people who were enslaved and the folks who weren't, to Baby Suggs. the way that she's able to kind of encapsulate what slavery robs of people and what it took for people, it really has, in one instance, it's a sad and heavy, dark story. But in another way, these books, Homegoing, and I'll talk about this next, but Homegoing and Beloved particularly because of what Toni Morrison does, it humanized people that I really never thought of in that capacity, because the reference to them that we have in the history that's being taken away now has really only been to the commodification of their bodies for the sake of capitalism and for the advancement of the American project. And I think a lot of the reason that we're taught about slavery in that way is because it absolves white people of their individual responsibility for slavery. Because if you blame it on, this is what the country did at this time, this is how America created wealth and generated like this societal, like where we just were as a country, it removes the blame from anybody. Nobody has to be responsible for what everybody did or what everybody condoned. But when you talk about the actual human toll, the fact that women would rather kill their children than sell them back into slavery, the fact that Paul D at one point references Setha's love for her children as risky, because how could an enslaved woman love anything? How could a woman who was formerly enslaved love anything, especially her children, because they weren't hers to love? She didn't have permission to love them. She didn't have permission to parent them. And it really it opened my eyes to the world of like neo-slave narratives and literature. I've also read several more. I read The Coming by Dr. Daniel Black previously, and these books, when I really get into them and I get caught up in them, I just kind of go in a deep hole and like fall in love with them. And that's kind of what happened with Beloved. So I read Beloved, finished it, and I saw Homegoing. I remember people telling me about it. I saw it in the airport on my way to, to Texas, I think, or Louisiana, headed to the South, and I saw this in the airport. I grabbed a copy and I literally finished it in a day. So for backstory, Beloved is a story, if you haven't read Beloved, I'm sure it's like a classic. Beloved is a story of a ghost that hunts her mother, Setha, her grandmother, Baby Suggs, and her sister, Denver, after her mother kills her. Rather than sell her back into slavery, Beloved comes and actualizes and becomes a person when Paul D, which is one of the former persons that also was enslaved, rekindles his relationship with Setha, and Beloved comes and terrorizes the house and basically forces Setha to confront with the choice she made, choosing to kill her beloved instead of allowing her to live and figure out if she'd be sold into slavery again. So that's what that book deals with. This book, Homegoing, deals with the 7 generations of people, one line of descendants who were sold into American slavery, one line of descendants who were sold into war that was left in Africa, but kind of kept in like this pseudo slave position at first, but then ultimately ends up, becoming free. One marries a white man that's colonizing and enslaving people on the island, and their lineage and how it kind of tracks through that story. And through each chapter is a new story about a new person in the bloodline. And it kind of goes through like all of the parts of the chattel slavery system, but also the parts of Jim Crow and just the things that Black people face in and being brought to America as slaves, and also building the country and like the things that we had to deal with in general. And this book was good to me for another reason. I definitely saw Toni's influence on Yaa as she was writing this book. And this book was just really, really moving. The chapter about Kojo and Willie, really the chapters about the Black Americans were really impactful to me, but also several of the chapters about the people that were still in Ghana as well, the Ghanaians, were very interesting. And I love the use of the elements of fire and water as connecting like generational attributes to people, and also the conversation about Christianity and the back and forth there with that, and like the forcing and the choosing of Christianity on people throughout the descendants and the conversations. One interesting choice, if I had the chance to ask Yaa a question about how she wrote the book, is why I found myself going back. So I also will show y'all, but she created this diagram at the beginning of the book that shows the bloodline for the family, right? And in this diagram, hold on, let me put this up here. So in this diagram, she also has, where is he? We have Carson, Sonny Freeman. Carson is one of the last stories in the book, but Carson has multiple children, but he only recognizes Marcus. She only recognizes Marcus. Marcus is the only one he raised. Carson deals with drug addiction ultimately in the book, and Marcus is the one I guess he got a hold of and was able to raise. But I'm really curious as to why he was the only one that was referenced in the bloodline and why the rest of the children weren't. But nevertheless, both of these stories, as I said in the beginning, as kind of alluding to, I just should explain more how I continue to make content though in the midst of everything that's going on is by centering myself in books and in stories that tell a different perspective of who we are and kind of how we came to be in this country. I know these works are fiction. I know that these works, they're historical fiction though, and they kind of shape and speak to a side of like our history that we don't really get anywhere else. We have to use fiction to kind of recreate this narrative because these stories do exist. Just because they aren't written don't mean it didn't happen. They're passed down through family legacies, and they were kind of recreated in a lot of ways. But these two books have sent me on a bit of a spiral and just have kind of sparked this fire for me to learn more about like neo-slave narrative fiction, neo-enslaved narrative fiction works, because I think in this time period, it's important for me to be able to really have a firm sense of self and a sense of who I was and who my people were without the white gaze and without the perception of slavery being rooted only in this permissible human exercise in civilization and not as something that people who were strong-willed and people who were resistant and people who fought it at every turn and every instance experienced in order for us to be able to live through what we have to live through, but also to figure out how to create an environment that's better for those that come after us. Because ultimately, I think that's like the thrust of these books, is that these folks survived what they thought was unsurvivable, slavery. Right? I thought I was done talking about this, and then I was reading A Mercy, and it made me think about something else. And also a quote of Tony's popped into my mind when she was talking about voting and just what happened today. It used to be a crime for my people to vote. It used to be a crime in this country for us to be able to read, to learn to read and write. It was against the law for those things to happen. And so, in a way, reading works about the people who those laws were created to expressly deny them their rights. In a way, it feels like soul work to affirm that their struggles weren't in vain, that the sacrifices, that the fear of their intellect, of their power, of their prowess, once they had the chance to show who they were, that fear is realized in me and in us, right? And that we are able to do what they were so scared that we were going to do all those years ago. In a way, it feels a bit like, and it could just be me in my own head about it, but a bit revolutionary. In a real sense, when you think about it, Black people have only had the right to read and write freely in America since post 1880. And that generation of Black people who were enslaved were adults who had to learn how to read and write. Maybe 1870, right? The Civil War ended in the 60s, so 1870-ish. So 30 years of people who were alive that didn't know how to read and write. that had to learn how to do it. Some of them never did. Then you get to the 1900s. That's 100 years, 125 years from the past. My great grandmother was born in 1932, which means that her mother was likely born in either the early 1900s or the late 1800s, and was a person that may not have had formal education in schooling and may have been denied the right to read and write. So in a way, reading stories about our immediate past, immediate history is as essential, is as required in I guess my personal revolution work as voting, to honor, if not for anything else, to honor the sacrifice and the commitment and what it took for me to have this moment and what it took for me to have this privilege today as a Black man in America. So I thought about that and had to come back and add this in. All right, back to the video now. And a lot of us, it's uncomfortable to talk about it and to really sit with it, but it's necessary to sit in and then think about it and to be uncomfortable, even as a Black person, right? It's a history that we know it's something that happened to us, but to get past the initial discomfort and to get past the initial sadness of the atrocity of it, but to really sit with, but there's a lesson and there's power and there's direction in how to move forward. So with that said, like I said, these books sent me on the spiral, but I also wanted to read more. So let me show you everything that I bought that's keeping me busy and keeping me thinking about my people, where we come from and how to move forward. From thrift books, which I didn't know existed until recently, but I found out about thrift books. So let me show you all the books I got, some of which are not related to neo-slave narratives, but some which are that I'll be reading to kind of center myself and continue to learn more about this experience, and also hopefully to expand my reading palette to how Black folks were affected and slavery implemented across the diaspora, especially in places like Brazil. So let me show you what I got. So I definitely went a little crazy. I got a huge stack of books, but this stack of books cost me what 3 books would have cost me at a mainstream bookstore here in DC. This stack of books was less than $100. And I have free rewards to order 2 more books for free, which are about to expire. I need to do that this week. But let me tell you about everything I got, what's related to the genre we're focusing on and what's not. So first, we had to get more Toni Morrison. I already started this one. I'm reading this one currently. This is A Mercy, which is a story about an enslaved girl from the 1700s. Toni goes a little bit further in time. It's one of her more recent works. I'm not sure exactly when, but it's way more recent than Beloved was. This was the 2000s books for sure. And dealing with slavery in general. So reading this one right now. Also currently reading Kindred by Octavia Butler, which is great. It's like sci-fi. It's basically like a woman being transported in and out of slavery to some seemingly past ancestor. Very good read. Very interesting, and also it doesn't it talks about the atrocities of slavery without making it the central focus point, at least thus far of it, while also dealing with kind of complex relationships that the main character is dealing with in their life. Also grabbed a copy of Planet in the Dark, which is a nonfiction work by Toni Morrison on whiteness and the literary imagination, just talking about Black writers and writing in general. Then I grabbed a copy of Disa Rose, which is a quintessential neo-narrative enslaved literature as well. I actually don't know what this one is about, but this is on my reading list as well. And then this is a set of books. Let me find the other one first. So The Longest Memory and Feeding the Ghost by Fred Diego. I hope I said your last name right. So I think this is the first book. So this book deals with a young slave attempts to flee Virginia plantation in 1810, and his father, who inadvertently betrays him. So it deals with that. And then this follow-up deals with The Middle Passage. Based on the true story, Feeding the Ghost confirms the importance of the memory and testimony of the struggle into oblivion. The Hunter novel. This is about a Christian mission where people are thrown into the ocean. Slaves thrown into the ocean. So we'll see what this is about as well. Jazz, which is not a neo-narrative slave. Also got a copy of Zora Neale Hurston's Man of the Mountain, because Zora Neale Hurston is one of them ones, and I know that this is good. So excited to read this as well. Then I got a copy of A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, which I believe is about Antigua. Actually, it's not about Jamaica. Jamaica Kincaid's expansive essay candidly appraises the 10 by 12 mile wide island in the British West Indies where she grew up and makes palpable the impact of European colonization and tourism. The book is a missive to the traveler, whether American or European, who wants to escape the banality and corruption of some large place. So this seems more as like social justice oriented than necessarily talking about slavery, but we shall see. This was in the recommended when I was grabbing all the other slave narrative books, so we'll check this out as well. The cover is interesting. This black baby saving a white one on the cover. That's interesting. So then I had to grab a copy of The Eyes of Watch God. I already read this, but classic book. I needed my own copy though, because this will probably be a book that I reread whenever I need to get through something like a day or two. Classic book. Also grabbed a copy of James. I started reading James, but I never finished it. I love Percival Everett though. I think that he is one of my favorite writers of all time. His books are funny, witty, and just really, really like magical books. The Trees, which I already put a video about that, changed my life. Great book, but I'm excited to read this as well. I know that I have to give him time sometimes with his books, like to get into it, but Erasure, The Trees, I'm also reading The Proposed History of African American History by Strom Thurmond, which is written by him and James Kincaid. So interested to see where this comes up and where that lands in my book. That's also about the black man perspective in Huck Finn, James. So it's a neo-slave perspective as well. Then we also, this book is new. It came out last year. I think he won the Pulitzer for this. Or he was a finalist for it. So he was a finalist for the Pulitzer for this book. But yeah. And then we have Quicksand and Passing by Neela Larson. Passing was made into a movie with Tessa Thompson, which is about a black woman that could pass for white, which, deals with similar issues. And I'm not sure what Quicksand is about. I'm assuming similar things, but it was a 2-for-1 book, so I just grabbed that. Then we also have Jubilee by Margaret Walker, which also was one of the stories that came up in the recommended when I was reading about neo-slave narratives. So we're going to read this as well. And then Don't Cry for Me by Dr. Daniel Black. I've already read this and the follow-up, but I had to have my own physical copy of this because this book right here, Get Into Dr. Black, 10 out of 10. Also the cover, let's make some noise for that. Fire. Great book. Paradise by Toni Morrison. Just wanted to have a copy of this as well, so I grabbed that. Didn't buy that from there. And then the last book I bought was Slaves in the Family, which is a white author who reckons with his family owning slaves and what that means for him, the implications of kind of being a part of a slave owning family, and how that, I guess, impacted, it's also nonfiction, how that impacted his understanding of America and like his role in the slave trade. But yeah, I'm excited to read those books. And I think we all have to find something that keeps us centered and grounded while you're making content, or while you're doing your work, or while you're just being alive in this time period where it seems like everything and all of the work of our ancestors is kind of being clawed away and said to not be important or be valued. But now more than ever, we have to know and affirm ourselves in whatever gives you that solace that we are, and that the things that we say and care about and work for are important. So continue to support yourself in the ways you need it. I'll continue to do so with my reading. I'll continue to affirm yourself in the way that you need it, and continue to do the work. Take the breaks when you need them. We'll carry the load until you're ready to come back. But until then, I'll see y'all later. Love and light. Peace.